without further ado, here's Off the Cuff with JP. JP, what's going on, bro?
My guy. Yo, thank you for having me, bro.
Man, you repping right here. We got Philly in the building.
All the way. I bleed it. I don't go anywhere without it. You know what I mean?
That's fire.
It's tattooed on my wrist, so when I shake hands, you know where I'm coming from.
Wow, look at that, man. I love the fit, bro. You know, it's funny though, because growing up, my last name was Palma.
Okay, yeah.
And we always try to resonate with, I guess, a hat that aligned with a nice P. So we would always get the Philly P
it's
right
better
there.
Than the Pirates joint.
Yeah,
sure,
yeah. Aesthetically, I'm not gonna lie. Aesthetically, it for sure is.
Yeah.
But man, it's a blessing to have you on the show, bro.
Hey, thank you for having me. Yo, love what you built, man. Like the dedication is crazy. I think you're at like 9 seasons
yeah, bro.
now.
9, yeah. Look at you, man. Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
9 seasons.
Hey, clap it up. You guys killed it,
That's a
man.
blessing,
Congratulations.
Bro. I'm excited, man. I think a lot of what we do is seamless, right? Because we have people like you, like yourself, doing phenomenal work on the ground. You know, but before we even get into the conversation, like I kind of want to we started this new thing to kick off every episode. We want to kind of just start with the intention.
Okay.
You know, let's set the intention for this conversation now. I can go first. You know, I think my intention right now is to be fully present and fully dive into this conversation. Yeah. For God to speak through me, to be able to ask the right questions and making sure that we're driving that inspiration for everybody watching this right now.
Yes.
You know, because ultimately this is why we started, is to really unravel those behind the scenes moments that we often don't see. Yeah. So I just want to be present, man. I want to learn. I want to observe everything that you got going on, but also ultimately I want to leave the people that may be watching with a token of inspiration. So that's my intent for right now.
I love that. Hey, listen, so I'm the oldest of 4, and you know, I carry this like weight with me. I'm always trying to, I get feedback on this all of the time, where I usually am trying to like put on, and sometimes detrimentally. You know, that can sometimes be a character flaw. But I'm going to say, I'm dropping that context to say, I think my intention today is to like use this conversation to express a sense of pride. Like I'm proud of why I'm sitting here right now. You wouldn't just have anybody on your platform. Like I've seen your episodes, they're amazing. Heavy hitters.
Thank you, bro.
Big seat, big shoes to fill. But also too, I'm just really proud of creatives like yourself who commit to the thing that they're building, you know? And hopefully in our Q&A or this conversation, that pride comes through. And even when I'm talking about myself, I'm hopeful to express like a pride that I have in you.
I love that, man. And I appreciate you setting the tone and being transparent, because I think ultimately it does come with pride, right? And I think sometimes it's really good to have that because you work so hard to get here.
Absolutely.
You know, and humility is one thing and stuff, but like, you know, it's crazy. Like I said this before, like my therapist once said to me, he's like, at what point in your life do you sit down and you say you deserve this? You know, and I'm just like, it took me a while to sit with that. I'm like, maybe it's because a lot of people from us come from humble beginnings.
That's right.
You know, and then we always just say, you know what, and I'm trying to be like you, bro.
That's
and
right.
kind of just throw the light elsewhere. But
yeah, that's right.
I love that you said, man, because yeah, bro, like you doing it, man.
Oh man, thank you. But so are you. I mean, like this is gonna make this really easy. Like I honestly and truly believe it takes like a village. And this conversation is gonna be helpful for me because like I'm inspired by you. Hopefully I'm inspiring for this thing to someone who's watching it out there.
1000%.
That's how the world works.
OD.
You know? So
OD.
that's my intent.
I'm excited, man. And shout out to Tequila. You know, we got right here.
Like she doesn't sleep. She doesn't sleep.
For sure, for setting this up.
Superstar, help set this up. Amazing. Yeah.
It's a family reunion. I feel the vibes and vibrations. I kind of want to get into it, man. I know we talked about Philly in the hat right now.
Absolutely.
And you rep it hard. You said you had it tatted and everything.
That's a fact.
Talk to me a little bit more about those early inspirations and kind of like that perspective that helped shape who you are
today. Yeah, man. So I'm from Southwest Philadelphia. I am. We were joking earlier. I'm John Petty III.
Yep.
And like,
don't forget it.
I know. And the neighborhood that I grew up in absolutely did not let me. Like my grandfather grew up in that neighborhood. My father grew up in that neighborhood. I ended up going to like some of the same schools that my dad went to. So you talk about like growing up in a shadow, a massive shadow. It's kind of crazy. And my mom, she's the youngest of 9.
Wow.
And they grew up in West Philadelphia, and they were like savages, like they're killers, absolute, like, you know, they impose their presence across the entire city. But I grew up as a product of John Petty, they called him Junior, and Wanda Petty, and that was like hell of an upbringing in my neighborhood. But also to like being the oldest of four in Southwest Philadelphia, I felt this immense responsibility to kind of like show my siblings that we didn't have to be subject to our environment. You know, we didn't have to be products of the environment. Like, we use it as inspiration or fuel, but we don't have to like fall into some of the traps that have been laid out around us, you know?
Right.
Super important for me. And, you know, it wasn't always easy. I definitely got into a fair share of trouble. I was a pretty good kid. I didn't get in as much trouble as my brother, but I got into some trouble, but I was a pretty solid kid. I mean, I grew up, you know, having ideas and, you know, playing at the rec. Shout out to like Myers and King Sesson and like chopping it up with my guys on 55th Street. I just have these vivid memories of us, you know, like basically just shooting the shit, man. Like, and I never take that background for granted. I never take that upbringing for granted. I carry it with me in every boardroom I'm in. I take my block in every boardroom I'm in. And honestly, I remember leaving Philly for college, and I didn't go far. But I remember the gang was like proud of me. Like my squad was proud of me for committing to like higher education and moving, because they hadn't seen too much of it.
Right.
And so at a certain point in time, I felt like the bet the neighborhood was placing, you know? And I'm realizing like these days, damn, that's a lot of pressure for a 17-year-old. It's like, damn, you gotta go put on. Right. Don't embarrass us out there. I not only have my mom and dad saying that,
right?
You know,
Not
only have my grandparents saying that, but also have my gang saying it. It's pretty crazy. You know?
It's insane, and it's crazy. Like, you already get in the pressure internally, right? Because you're the oldest of four. Yeah. And then you get into outside pressure and the circumstances of your society to say, yo, like, you got this golden ticket, don't F it up, right?
Basically.
You know what I'm saying? And I love that you kind of talked about the family structure and stuff, because I think when I hear that, I'm the oldest of three. Oh, nice. So I kind of understand the pressures of, you know, unintentional pressures, but it's just like, nah, like, you got to make sure, like, you, like, again, you don't F it up. Yeah. But I think one of the person that's super empowering in my life is my grandmother. And I think for you, Wanda, right?
That's my mom.
You owe a lot to her.
You know, she passed in 2021 and broke my heart. Definitely changed my like worldview, honestly, rocked my world. You know, like, I remember, I just remember the days where she was like just so committed to us. You know, like I was 16 years old when my mom and my dad split, and they did it amicably. They even had this like bantery relationship. And so like, I was never too far away from my dad, but at that point in time, I was like the man of my household, but I'm a child, you know? And my mom, it's just like, she probably 110 pounds soaking wet. And like, again, the baby of her massive village that she's a product of. I watched her put an entire household on her back, man. Like, and like, when I think about who I am today, it's no way I'd be sitting here without all of her contributions, you know? So I try to dedicate every move that I make to her. And I'm also trying to be gangster and not talk about her too much, because I will start crying on your podcast. Like, you know, like, no, honestly and truly, like, she means the world to me. And it's so wild because my baby sister, she has two children, Esty and Deuce, and Estelle, I just see so much of my mom and Estelle sometimes, man. It's like these little flashes of like, I'm like, whoa, wait, that is a child. She is a child. I don't know where she gets that, like, you know, 50-year-old energy from, but that's crazy. And so like, I feel my mom around me all of the time in those ways like that. But man, like, I think a lot about, like, I'm at a place now in my career where I'm thinking all of the time about, like, okay, how can we set people up, put them in positions to win? Like, like payment, you know, like how can we get our people paid? Not just monetary payment, but, you know, opportunity or position, et cetera, et cetera. Like, man, I would never, ever be able to pay my mom back for everything she's given me, ever.
That's a blessing, man.
You know?
I mean, you're doing an incredible job kind of even reflecting on these moments, and I think it's super empowering. And the reason why I wanted to touch upon that is because I think sometimes we want to pay so much homage to the people that really inspire us and stuff, and kind of give them those flowers, right?
Absolutely.
And, you know, my grandmother's no longer here, but her spirit lives through me. Yeah. And every time that Angie gets on the phone with her grandmother, it reminds me of my grandmother.
Oh, that's
you know,
right.
So I always feel that closeness of like, wow, like if only they met. You know, if only they got the opportunity to connect. Yeah. Like, you know, and I also get teary-eyed too, because I'm like, I understand those feelings. You never forget those moments. You never forget those lessons and stuff. So I appreciate you even, you know, tapping into that.
No, absolutely, man. And it's so great. By the way, congratulations again on I know the wedding is coming.
Yeah, it's flying.
We don't want to timestamp the episode or anything like that, but yo, this is a major moment you're walking into, man. Shout out to you. And Angie and the family. And the only reason I'm bringing that back up is because my wife, actually, Jennifer, her and my mom shared a birthday. So I see a lot of her in with my mom, or I see a lot of my mom and my wife as well. Like just mannerisms and like interests sometimes. Definitely the way she talks to me, she sometimes thinks she's my mom. but yo, it's crazy to just have like all of these forces around to remind you, to your point, of like the spirit or the presence. They never really go. Their human form may not be around, but they're definitely still hanging out.
That's fire, bro. I'm glad you touched upon that. You know why? Because it's super important. Even before we get into all the amazing things that you're doing on the ground, it's always super important for us to set the foundation.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And I kind of wanted to lean in because that transition, right? They say that transition to translation, right? Kind of like that moment, that pivotal moment for you, and kind of what kicked off your advertising career, right? I think one of the things that you love to say, you stated in other platforms, is like the work that people can see themselves in.
Yes.
That's what you gravitate towards,
yes.
right?
Yes.
So I think it's so much beauty into that, because sometimes certain people see something in us before we see it in ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that was the case for you.
Yeah.
Right. So tell me a little bit more about that transition and what kicked off there.
Oh my God. So yo, you know what's crazy? I love this because we're talking about foundation and then like the transition into translation. But my first experience with work or commercial advertising was probably the one that I can remember, at least. A lot of work that we do in advertising is super forgettable. So the first recollection I have is right around the time the Sixers were coming off of their like legendary NBA Finals run. And I grew up in Philly. Allen Iverson is like a god to me. He's like, there was a point in time he could do no wrong. He was like, he represented everything. Like, speaking of like seeing yourself in something, I think he moved the culture, moved the needle for the NBA. Definitely changed the complexion of the game. And right around 2001, there was a commercial for his signature shoe, Reebok A5.
Yep.
And
I remember
the
that
spot was just like, I mean, come on. It was like epic. It was shot in black and white. Hype Williams shot it. So it played like a music video. Trackmasters did the music, and Jadakiss was rapping on it. I mean, this is just like this doesn't feel like any other commercial you would see. Like, it doesn't feel like a script. It feels like a verse. It doesn't feel like a score. It feels like a beat. You know, it's like I was in that world.
I feel like you're about to give us a few bars right now.
No, you mean like I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to embarrass myself. But no, in all seriousness, that's the one I remember. And I remember feeling so like glued to the screen when it came on. You know, like I remember committing that verse to memory. You know, like I remember running it back, like actually recording the commercial on a VHS and running it back.
Right.
Like, and the irony is, Steve Stout, who was the founder of Translation, one of the co-founders of Translation, he was partially responsible for making that spot a thing. So there's no transition for me without that foundation in the beginning. Like, you know, like I didn't know at the time when I was watching, I'm just a kid, I'm watching television, I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. I didn't think about who helped make that spot a reality. But by the time I was like, you know, I had a more like a greater sense of the business. I remember connecting those dots like, wait, hold on. Damn, I'm about to take a meeting with Steve Stout. And by that time I had done so much homework, man, I was so and wanting to be in the world. I was like, you know, in it.
Wow.
And as the universe would have it, I'd end up working for that guy for almost 6 years. That's a crazy, crazy run.
Wow. Even kind of leading up to that, I guess that meeting or that, you know, that next phase, like tell us a little bit more about that preparation. Because I think, you know, oftentimes certain opportunities do come up for a lot of us, especially a lot of creatives, entrepreneurs who may be waiting for that one opportunity, right? There's a lot of preparation that needs to go into it. Like, how did you prepare for that to not only be remembered, but also land that opportunity?
Oh, I love that question. I think, so my mom was an educator and she didn't play about those grades. I was always like a pretty stellar academic student. And my dad, he was an accountant, also an entrepreneur. And so he's a builder. And it feels like, in this case, you have maybe the best of both worlds kind of inside of you. And that academic sense kind of pushed me into a space. Like I ended up graduating from like one of the top high schools in the city, engineering and science. My dad also went there. Yikes. I was a 10 times better student than him, by the way.
Did you ever rub it in on him?
I mostly rubbed it in because he was just old. He was like the second graduating class or something like that. It's like, this is not even a high school yet. You have nothing to rep. But you know, like I graduated from that high school, and then coming out of high school, I got like a full scholarship to Lincoln University, which is the first HBCU, a lot of history, a lot of legacy, more shadows to develop in. And it was there where I started to like exercise or refine a lot of that, like creative side, the academic side, the entrepreneurial side, like all of that started to come together at LU. And I say that because I was like super involved. I like very early on, I was like the king of my class freshman year somehow. Student Government Association, we put on homecoming. I was like writing for the Lincolnian, our paper. And I joined the greatest fraternity on the planet, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. And
many would differ, but yeah.
But like,
it's all love.
Yeah,
bro.
it's all love. It's all
me?
But it was at Lincoln in those 4 years where I was like learning how to get shots up. You know, like really being a self-starter. I was even starting like a record label while I was there.
Wow.
It's called Platinum Heat Productions, and I was like, literally, we were building studios, booking studio time, recording, making records. Like I was managing producers and rappers. It was crazy. Like, and it was successful, you know. And that was when it was like, okay, this is like, I don't necessarily know what this is called, but this is what you want to do. And that's when I started doing a bunch of homework. And so the prep was leaning into the things that was really making me happy, but also being super educated about the space. Like what were people like me or people who came from places I came from, what were they doing? Or what do they do now? What type of work are they responsible for that I feel like is dope, you know? So it was a lot of homework, a lot of experiments. And I was doing that like at school, in my spare time. I was going to class and then dedicating the rest of my time to that. And then I just, like from there, I've not done anything else. Like I've taken jobs that I hated because I thought I needed to be an adult. Kind of boring, terrible cubicle jobs. And every time I've tried to do that, it just was never right. The universe would push me back over to this space I love. And so the prep was always that. The prep was like, use all of the time and all of the energy and all of the brain cells you have to refine a craft that you don't even know how to label or categorize, which was crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. You know, and you know, I'm very familiar with the brand translation, and you know, Steve does some amazing work, and he continues to do that through the agency, and you know, now United Masters and all of that stuff too. But I think it's important for us to lean in on that moment, because I think it sparks so much, right? Like in those 6 years, like what are some of the biggest takeaways? What are some of the biggest lessons you feel like you've learned? That kind of help propel you and prepare you for moments like this.
Great question. I mean, look, before I joined Translation, I graduated from Lincoln and went to Drexel University to learn how to execute ideas. It's an engineering school.
Oh, wow.
And so I went to go get my master's in what they call industrial project management. And what I wanted to understand was, like, listen, everybody has ideas, but how in the hell do you execute them?
Word.
Like, that's the difference.
Yeah.
Like, you know this very well.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I might have an idea right now. It's just like, damn, how am I gonna do it?
how you gonna do
it?
it? But you also had an idea and now you're executing the hell out of it. But you know how many people just have a podcast idea and have been sitting on it for a decade or something? Like, the difference is execution. And Drexel taught me how to execute. Now, the problem though was I got recruited to a project management firm coming out of Drexel that was like a super shiny job, but it was definitely a job, and I was miserable. And I did it for about 8 months and quit with nothing, nowhere to go. But in my spare time while I was there, I was writing for like a quarterly magazine called Rain. And it was a part of the AOL Huffington Post network, if you remember that.
Yeah.
And some recruiter at Translation saw my work. Her name is Abby Krasinski, and she changed my life. I remember like being like, yo, is this real? Like, you know, like you hear stories from like athletes sometimes getting phone calls from like coaches that they might hold in high regard, or, you know, or teammates that they might be like, nah, I never knew, I think I would play for that person. When Abby called and was like, yo, I think your stuff is pretty cool, pretty good, I was like, wow. Because at that point, I knew what Translation was. I knew who Steve Stout was. Also thought I wanted to be in the music business. So when she called and while they were recruiting me, I was also interviewing at Def Jam, which at the time still iconic. I mean, like,
1000%.
Like, bro, this is the house that like Irv Gotti built, Jay-Z, DMX,
The house you want to be in.
I want a jacket.
Yeah.
You know?
I still want one.
Right? Like,
tough.
And I remember getting a verbal offer from Translation coming out of a Def Jam interview that I thought I smashed. I was like, yo, I feel really good about what just happened in there. I left a lot of bodies in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Abby calls and is like, yo, congratulations. I'm like, oh, I want to be happy right now, but will you give me a few days? She was like, nah.
Dang.
I'm not giving you a few days. What do you mean? We excited about you right now.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first lesson. The first lesson was, you don't know how many times this thing is gonna come around. And there might be something like sexy or attractive that's like floating in the universe somewhere that you think you're into. But when you get that phone call, you kind of got to pounce. And shout out to Abby and Translation for teaching me that. I think as fate would have it, I took the Translation job and fell in love, like, immediately. I learned so much really quickly. They're speaking a whole other language. I never worked in advertising before.
Yeah.
They are like using words and acronyms that I've never heard. Like, but I know the work that they're responsible for is just dope. And so I want to be a part of that. So I'm literally outworking everyone. Also feel a little old too, like at the time. Like, honestly, I was maybe 25, which sounds crazy today.
Or
But 25, entry-level position, I'm sitting next to kids who maybe just come out of school. Like, so I'm feeling like, damn, I'm like 3, maybe 4 years older than this kid, and the person that I'm reporting to, we're the same age. Like, they didn't go get their master's from Drexel University and have a job that they already quit. They just jumped right into this thing. They knew what they wanted. And so I was a little insecure about that early on. The way I was thinking about like combating that was just outworking everyone. Like I knew that I was gonna learn faster, produce more, ask smarter questions. Like really quickly, you wouldn't put me in this class. You're gonna have to put me in another class. You know, it's just like sports or just like the classroom. You know, like this kid, he's not operating at a 4th grade level. We got to put him in 5th grade or 6th grade or something. That's what I was on at Translation. Like I'm talking about like, I'm not leaving here until this is done. I fully understand that. And I've not only delivered what you asked for, but maybe 2 or 3 times what you asked for. That's what I was on. Not sustainable, but that's what I was on though. You know?
You was on a mission, man. You was on a mission.
Mission impossible. It was like, damn. I remember thinking, yo, I'm gonna lose my girlfriend. I'm gonna lose a house that I just bought in Southwest Philly. I'm gonna lose everything if I keep this up. Like, you know, like I remember sometimes having those existential moments like, yo, dog, does this mean that much to you?
Wow.
Like having those types of conversations with yourself, that's a wild place to be in, especially as you're trying to grind and like essentially like outwork everybody. But everybody around me was super supportive, honestly. Like started with my mom. Like she was just like, yo, go, you gotta go do it. You built for it, you gotta go do it. My girlfriend, who was now my wife at the time, was like, yo, I'll hold you down. Not really excited about New York. We met in Philly. You've been doing a lot, but I'm gonna hold you down, you know? And then I had like partners and my frat brothers, everybody was just holding me down. It was great.
That's a beautiful story, man. I think it really aligns with the foundation work we mentioned, right? But I think it's some of those humbling moments that make the story so much more profound, so much more relatable, right? It's just like you want to be the first one in, but the last one out kind of stories, right? Especially when we learn coming from you know our communities and stuff. And you also work with some of the greats, right? You touch upon, you've been in rooms with the Nipseys, you've been in the rooms with the J Balvin's, the Travis Scotts, the Steve Styles, like we already talked about it. Like, you know, seeing JP kind of in front of that computer watching, I mean, the TV, watching AI and Jadakiss and all of that, but also now being in the rooms with some of the greats, right? Like, tell me about those moments right there. Kind of take us back to that memory lane to really see kind of what really sparked and what kind of kept you in that space.
It was Steve. I think it was Steve. I think being around Steve Stout taught me, oh shit, we have value. Like these are cultural heroes. They're amazing people. Like the people that we hold in high regard, like Jay-Z and Nas. Those guys are his friends. Like, and it's not abnormal to just see him walking through the office, you know, and they're there because there's some value exchange happening.
For sure.
Like those guys are not just gonna hang out anywhere, you know, like they gotta make it make sense. Stout he had this way of like showing me that everything that I had learned in my life was of value. Like those ideas that you grew up with in Philadelphia, Southwest Philadelphia, or the way you see the world, or like the records that you listen to, the lyrics that you like, the movies that you revere as classics, all of that is valuable. And don't leave that. Don't try to play like dress up in this organization because you think it's a real job and you gotta be somebody else. That is off limits. You have to be your whole self and you have to project that onto whatever the project is or whatever the situation or scenario is. He did a really good, because that's what he does. He just does a really good job at being Steve Stout. You know, like he's from Queens, he sees the world away, he's living 10 years ahead of everybody else, and he's speaking like that with a lot of conviction and a lot of confidence. And he required that of everyone who worked with him. And I'm pretty sure he still does. But I quickly learned like, oh damn, like the thing that I think is dope, if I say it out loud and I believe that, then the rest of this room might think it's dope too. And now we off to the races. And now I'm gonna be responsible for like a A5 campaign or something. you know? And that was probably the biggest game changer for me because, you know, advertising, it doesn't look like this type of room,
Right.
you know? The way most of advertising sees the world is not the way I see the world.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I think that speaks a lot of volume because, you know, through translation, we're also transitioning to Wieden, right? And I think that's one of the biggest vessels as to why they brought you in was to make sure that you're changing the structure a little bit. You're bringing in more of those voices, the community, people that look like us to make sure that we're telling the right stories authentically. You know, tell me a little bit more about the importance on that and kind of like once you got in, like what are the shifts you had to make internally to get it going and the way you saw it?
So when leaving translation was really hard because I thought we were building something really special in United Masters. Like we were just getting that thing off the ground. We were just able to like publicly talk about it. And like I told you before, I wanted to be in the music business anyway. And just so happened like the universe makes it a reality for you. And so I was really excited about that. I think more than anything, I was excited about what I knew we were building at Translation United Masters. And, you know, by this point in time, I had a lot of equity in the company, like a lot of political equity in the company. It was like, you know, I was working on the dope stuff. I think I had an amazing partner in Joel Rodriguez, who we were like a ridiculous tandem, like a stupid duo. They would throw us at, it was nothing that we felt like we couldn't solve. But by this point in my career, you know, 5 years in or whatever, there were other things I wanted to achieve. And I was realizing Wieden+Kennedy was like the Yankees of advertising. They were like just long history of nothing but hits.
Right.
But I also knew that there was a value that I could add to that thing because while they had a bunch of hits, it was like, I like different types of hits.
Yeah.
You know, like A5,
Right.
music festivals. Like one of my first projects of translation was Budweiser Made in America with Rock Nation.
Wow.
Like, this is a job. Like you gotta get paid I get paid to go home to help work a music festival that Jay-Z is headlining with his wife, who just so happens to be, you know, Beyonce.
Word.
Like,
Exactly.
Like I'm at home doing this, like, come on, this is like utopia. That's work, you know? And Wieden, they were responsible for building different types of work. They were like making like spectacular films, cinema. Like, oh, we're watching the Super Bowl or the finals. And now there's this spot that they did for Nike. And it's like, oh, wow, that was great. We don't talk about it anymore. You know, regular people don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Ad people are like, oh my God, it's the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But regular people were like, oh, that was great. And now they're waiting for the next thing. I wanted to, you know, go to Wieden+Kennedy to help us do, like use that superpower they had, storytelling superpower they had, to do more like immersive participatory things. And so the conversations I was having early on with our management team was, hey, we got to build some stuff. Like we have to diversify the output of this thing. If I'm going to be a part of this picture, I want to be that. I want to help us do that because my brain isn't going immediately to the 60-second spot. I'm thinking about this thing holistically. Like maybe it's a video game, maybe it's a sneaker. You know, I worked for the guy who is responsible for the S. Carter. I think maybe we could do something like that, right? You guys work on Nike, right? It's like, that was my whole
connecting
swag.
the dots there, yeah.
Right. And they were like, yeah, this kid is crazy. You know, tell us what's, you're telling an advertising agency that has a ridiculous reputation and has built it over the course of 35 years or something, that we should be doing something different. We're really good, you know? And I was like, hey, you're okay. You know, you'd be great if I was here, you know? That was my swag, but that was a younger version of me, you know?
Did it take a lot of convincing or like, you know, tell me about, because a lot of who you may be pitching to doesn't look like you on the other side, right?
That's
So I
absolutely
think
right.
even too, like I spent a lot of time in advertising myself. Like I used to be on the sales side, so whatever was being created, I would sell it. You know what I'm saying? Get a partner to fulfill whatever, and a lot of spots in that sense. And I started in TV, then went to digital,
Nice.
social, some experiential here and there.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, the client or the internal folks may not necessarily watch the same hits as you or really align in that. But you were going against the grain a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes many of us may be in certain roles or responsibilities that we're always itching for more.
That's right.
Right. But how did you approach those conversations to make sure that, you know, your voice was being heard?
Took that for granted at translation. Like I didn't realize how much of a shorthand I had with my colleagues, coworkers, and even our clients. Like our clients would come into translation for a reason, you know, and I just so happened to be so philosophically aligned with that, like, you know, but Wieden+Kennedy, they had different types of clients and they had different types of talent internally. And I understood really quickly the difference in code. I think the language was the same. It was similar language, but the code was different. You know, it was, the things that used to take me a week took me 3. Because I gotta email this person, I gotta talk to this person about it, I gotta play this song for this person maybe.
Oh, wow.
You know, like stuff like that. Like honestly and truly, I joined Wieden+Kennedy, New York in 2018. And I remember still feeling the weight of Nipsey Hussle's death in the creative community, like overall just being really sad. Like I think like the culture just being saddened by the loss.
Right.
At translation, Nipsey dies, that's a day off. At Wieden+Kennedy, Nipsey dies, maybe just you know.
Wow.
You know, that was the organization I walked into. Now, you know, it's not a terrible thing. It's just a very different thing. You know, it's like a different league, a different thing. And I quickly made it my mission to kind of like balance the scales some, because I think that's a little bit of a cheat code. You know, like, you know what? I could probably be more efficient if my team understood these types of plays. And I just so happened to be in a positional role that allowed me to influence the organization that way.
That's crazy, man. It blows my mind that you started first year coming out, boom, get into a role, being at translation, sitting next to somebody that just graduated college, right? And stuff, reporting to somebody else, outworking everybody throughout that, then going to Wieden+Kennedy, being in a role position, but also now that you're rolling in position, you're kind of aligning the dots, lining the plays, but also you kick off this amazing thing internally where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna have the own creative studio inside.
Crazy.
And you did Bodega, like,
Bodega.
that to me is just like, it's just like, yo, talk about preparation, talk about like really seeing the vision for it, right? It's just crazy. Like, tell me the vision that you had for Bodega, like, how has that vision kind of evolved as your time at Wieden+Kennedy has also?
Oh man, it evolves every day. Like I was just texting one of my general managers earlier, like right before we started having this conversation, and he's asking a question that is going to evolve the vision again. And I feel like that happens like every 12 hours, you know? But then it's so surreal because, you know, we just hired a creative lead for a bodega in Shanghai, which is like, what are we doing? It's like
Shanghai,
it's just like, oh my God, I can't even read these slides. I think what you're saying, I think what you're selling is dope. When you're communicating to me is dope. We just gotta make sure you say that to the client. I don't know what that says, but make sure you convey. You're like, that's my life now. And I think the most important thing is to not just like, you know, be focused on the finish line, probably understanding that there is no finish line, and like, you know, have a sense of the bigger picture, but don't be rigid about how you paint that. Or how you get to the finish line. Like, you know, you might walk into a thing and be like, okay, I'm gonna go right down this street right here. And if you just marry that, you're gonna miss so many opportunities. You're gonna miss out. In my case, you might miss out on projects that might change the trajectory of this group. You might miss out on talent that you like, oh man, we don't really have a role for that. Now, if this person is just dope and doesn't live on this street, like maybe don't kick that person out, maybe like change the street. Like if you can be that flexible in the way you approach literally everything, I think the sky is the limit. And that's been the key to our success at Wieden+Kennedy Bodega. And they've taught us how to do that really well.
I love that, man. And now that you're in there, you know, been there for some time now as well, like already had the foundation of Bodega kind of evolve. And like you said, it's always evolving. Yeah. Where some of the proudest moments, the proudest campaigns that you feel like you worked on,
oh man,
that still have like a close place
so
in your
many.
heart?
Well, the biggest thing is just that group and those people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, creating Bodega, making a space for like non-traditional creative talent, which they typically wouldn't be able to call Wieden+Kennedy home. Mm. You know, like they have as much to bring to the table, but it just feels like an exclusive place sometimes. Creating Bodega, that's my greatest achievement in my career to date, because it just creates opportunity for others. And then there's campaign stuff like, you know, at Translation, I was a part of some really dope stuff. The Shop, LeBron stuff, and then KD stuff, and we won the NBA. Worked on HBO, the Defiant Ones, but at Wieden+Kennedy, big stuff. Like, man, I can't even believe I'm a part of some of this stuff right now. We're talking about Paris Olympics right now for Nike, which is crazy. McDonald's, Famous Orders, the Travis Scott, J Balvin, Saweetie stuff. Like, to me, that reminds me of like the Reebok A5 moment. I think there's probably a 13-year-old somewhere that was like, oh my God, like Travis Scott and McDonald's, this is crazy. I mean, I know that that's true. I've seen some of those 13-year-olds that are crazy, but promising. So, I mean, the list goes on. Like, for me, honestly, it's even less about work these days. It's less about the cases, which is probably blasphemous to say in my role, but it's more about like creating the conditions for the team to be the best versions of themselves so that they can have their own versions of Reebok A5, Travis Scott, McDonald's, you know, all of that stuff.
That's beautiful, man. And I think that kind of goes back to what you say, like, you know, the get on, put on mentality, right?
My why. That is my why.
Wow. Tell me about that just philosophy that you have and why that is so like rooted into who you are.
It goes back to being the oldest of four. Like, I like to tell this, like growing up in Southwest Philly, we lived in this apartment that had like this heavy ass door on Chester Avenue. And my mom used to make me hold that door open. It was like, it had to be like 2 tons. And my arms were probably like, you know, the quarter of what they are right now. So I'm like struggling, shaking, and my sisters are like moving at a snail's pace, you know? Like, but like figuratively though, that's what I'm about. Like I was actually doing that growing up, but like philosophically, figuratively, I'm all about like pushing that heavy ass door open for like my brothers and sisters to come through that thing. You know, I'm all about that because one, I just feel like there's this innate responsibility inside of me that I can't shake. I'm super protective and like I want us all to win. But then there's also too, like the spaces that we occupy now, it's like, it's egregious. It's so egregious. Like the briefs, the business is all pointed our way, but most of the team and the beneficiaries of that business, they don't look like us or come from where we come from. And so like that's like a massive delta that I'm like trying to do my small part in closing. I don't love that because some of those conversations get really nasty and it's like so misguided and has everything to do with who's in the room. And I just feel like that is my greater purpose. If I get caught up in like making a campaign or trying to get an idea off at its like utmost fidelity, that I can see that being a really sad world quickly because so many people have to weigh in. I mean, you know this, like mad parties have to approve something before the public sees it.
For sure.
So that morphs an idea 30 times over. So like if you have an idea on Monday, by the time we get to Friday, it's not your idea anymore, that belongs to the streets. And so I can't get caught up in that. I got to think about like a bigger purpose. And I feel like that purpose could take anywhere. Like it doesn't have to be advertised, it can be anywhere.
Yeah, and I think I love that about you, because I think, you know, kind of brand identity, you being in the space of really catering to community, bringing community along the way, and really sharing these authentic stories shows off in a lot of your work. And I think you said something too in one of a few other platforms. You said, first, our culture is not for sale.
No.
You know, you have to earn your way in contributing into our space.
Yes.
And I think that's super important. And I think a lot of the work that you're doing with a lot of these campaigns, it comes true on the other side. And it's funny though, because of my time, before I even got into like tech sales and all of that stuff, I spent a lot of time on the ground doing like experiential and kind of like on the ground work with different brands and stuff, and being able to speak authentically to your audience and stuff. But for example, like, you know, one of the biggest moments too was like, you know, McDonald's back then wasn't really garnering to our community a lot.
No way.
It was being flagged in many cases, but it's so amazing to see the transitions of what you were able to put together to really, really define it. Honestly, you know what? Like, we can do the J Balvin's, the Travis Scotts, with the right person behind, we're able to make these impactful changes. And I think that speaks to a lot of the volume that you did on the ground to say, you know what? That's the story back then, but that's not a story right now.
Oh man, yo, thank you so much for saying that. It makes it, going back to the intention, I'm super proud of that. Like, one, nobody can do that alone. The team is ridiculously talented. Our clients are like phenomenally empowering. I don't know why they trust us as much as they do with their business and their vision. Probably because we haven't messed up yet. But I think, you know, yeah, man, it just takes the conversation, the honesty.
Yeah.
You know, like, especially for a brand like McDonald's, you know, that brand, like, everybody has their McDonald's, you know, like, it's in every community. And it just so happens to over-index in our communities. Yeah. And so for them to not have a relationship that is mutually beneficial, like for them to not be putting out work that people from our community can't see themselves in, is crazy. Word. And that's like the first conversation we need to have. Before I dedicate any thought to this, let's talk about that part. And our clients just so happen to be open to talking about that. I love that about them. We'll run through a wall for those guys, because they are just that amazing.
That's
and
fun.
they buy like some of the most ridiculous things from us, which is cool. Like,
that's fire. Cool. And that's like the creative vision that, I mean, once you have, like you said, going back to the idea, and if you get the right partner to really bet on that idea, anything is possible, you know? And I know a lot of like entrepreneurs, creatives, you know, agency owners right now may be tuning in, because I think a lot of what we want is those briefs. A lot of what we want is those RFPs. A lot of the things that we want is like being able to pitch and be in front of those rooms and stuff. Yeah. And I kind of want to like at least share and get some sort of perspective of like the framework of how you tackle like, let's say, an opportunity in RFP, right? I think it's important for us to kind of unpack that a little bit, just to really align, you know, the audience up for success. Like, what is that framework that you typically look at, or what is some like structure that you typically keep in mind when looking at RFPs and when looking to pitch to other clients to gain the business?
Great. I think, you know, like the first thing I think about is this brief, or is this challenge honest? Like, are we even thinking about the problem the right way? You know, like, question what is being asked of us before we even try to start to answer, because that's a slippery slope, snowball effect. You're just making stuff and nobody knows, like, well, why are we here again? Right. So, like, you know, eliminating all of the BS, like getting rid of the jargon and like all of the things that kind of get in the way of the noise, and just getting to the core of the thing that needs to be achieved, I think is the first thing. And then the second thing is like being confident in that truth in your response. It's like, yo, look, you might not want to hear this, but that's why your RFP exists. You know, you have a product, they don't care. The streets don't care, you know? Or like, you know, this is how people really feel about, like, you know, Air Jordan mids, or black Air Force Ones. Like when I say these things to you, like we understand exactly what that means. But when you live in the boardroom, they might not always have that idea. So like if they're asking you to go out, hey, let's go out and try to sell these black Air Force Ones, just as an example. Just as an example. You gotta be like, well, you know how the streets feel about black Air Force Ones, right? Like either we lean into that, like we have to address that, because if we don't, like what are we doing? It's going nowhere, you know? And so I honestly think the McDonald's Travis Scott famous orders thing is a perfect example of this, because the ask was like, I think ultimately the ask was, how do we get people to view McDonald's like differently? One, like how do they really feel about it? Well, they might not feel like a sense of pride, like talking about like, you know, what they order, but everybody has an order. That can be the truth. Yeah. And then it just so happened to catch Travis Scott and Pop Smoke shooting a video over in like Brooklyn. And they just so happened to be like crushing McDonald's. Wow. In their music video. Not commissioned. We didn't pay for that. That's like, they don't have clearance for this. Right. Because our client doesn't even know it exists. Yeah. So like seeing that and being like, we got a truth here. Like, kid actually does eat McDonald's. He actually likes it enough to put in this video. Maybe we could talk about this thing, you know? And maybe if we say, hey, your cultural hero is proud enough to talk about his order, like, you know, then you get to see, like, you know, I think that caused a wave across the category. You started seeing like Popeyes and like Arby's doing like some whack, forgettable version of it. But I think that's like the goal. You start with the truth, and then you try to put like a voice to that truth, you know, some kind of like presentation to that truth. If your creative is honest, then they can't miss. I love that. You know, it's daunting though, because everybody's in this process trying to like justify their role in it. So they're all like inadvertently pushing on the truth. They're like, oh, I have an opinion, because if I don't say something in this meeting, my manager's gonna say, you said nothing in this meeting, and their opinion is trash or like totally inaccurate. But you gotta make space for them, because like nobody wants to be the person who was like, no, you can't speak. Absolutely. So it could get out of hand, but you gotta do your best to kind of reel it back in, you know. And it goes back to the homework, right? You're doing the homework. You're being able to see all of that. It's an amazing opportunity that you're able to kind of piece those moments together. And I kind of want to like make my way through kind of these last couple of questions here, because one thing that I really want to lean in on is, we talked about pride, right? Initially, like setting a tone, right? And I think one of the prideful moments and one of the amazing moments that you started your own ad agency, right? 14th and Market. You know what I'm saying? 14th and Market is something I even stumbled upon, and I've been seeing the amazing things that you've been doing, and I'm like, oh wow, like the caliber of clients, the database, all these amazing things and stuff. Like, tell me about the inspiration of why that came to life. Okay, this is great. So 14th and Market started like sometime at translation. What happens in this field is you get mature enough in it, and then like people who could never call your agency are calling you or reaching out, like, would love to pick your brain on something. And naturally that's what happens. It's like, oh, do you have a perspective on this thing? And because I want to see like smaller local businesses, or even like in the beginning, and even still, it's not even clients really, is more like personalities, like recording artists, fashion designers, authors, are like, yo, you have a skill set that I think could apply to my world. Would you help me think through this? And I would always be like, absolutely, because I'm into this. I want to help you figure this out. And you know, it just gets to like, you know, I founded that group with my wife. Wow. And full circle. And she's like, you know, if these like small businesses, personalities are gonna be paying you, then you can't just be like, you gotta protect yourself, especially if we're gonna get married, because your mess is my mess now. Yeah, you gotta respect that, you know? Yeah. And so it's like, okay. And so we that was like the reason we organized it as such. But the meaning is 14th and Market in Philadelphia, that's not a real place. It goes Broad Street and Market, mark the center of the city. And like if you're watching like film or you see like anything around touristy areas, you probably have seen this like landmark. It's like a statue of a skyscraper of Billy Penn. Broad Street it's like the perfect like intersection of Philadelphia. And what I love is that that's a tale of two cities, the city itself. Not dissimilar from New York, LA, Chicago, Atlanta. Like on one side, beautiful city, beautiful, glamorous city.
Yeah.
On the other side, congratulations, you made it out of there. Congrats, right? But that's the case for when I'm talking about any big major metropolitan city. It's like that, there's a duality to those cities. I love that though, because that intersection represents like the block in the boardroom, the glam and the grit, We believe greatness lives right there somewhere. Like if you can figure out how to not be so polished and alienate like who you're really talking to, or if you can be gritty enough, but not so gritty that the boardroom doesn't get it. If you can meet in the middle, then you can make some really dope work. And that's what 14th and Market is teaching us how to do. What's really dope is it's not even a creative agency. It's like, we call it like a multi-platform storytelling company, because we're not doing like commercial advertising. I think we're serving as creative consultants. I think we get really cool work with like the Hip Hop Museum, which is cool. Like, that's epic. When they call us and they're like, yo, they just want you guys to help us think through a thing. We're not looking for you to make a commercial or anything like that, but if you can offer your expertise, we're into this. We're managing like legitimate artists and creatives and helping them elevate their careers. Like that to me is just ill. Like that is get on, put on as a company.
Yeah.
And I also get to use that to teach younger storytellers the game as well. Like if you don't want to be in front of the camera, let me show you how behind the camera works, the process. And I love that about 14th and Market. I love that about the crew that dedicates some of their time to that effort. Like it's everything. That is the grand plan. That is a master plan.
That's fire. I love that, man. It talks about ownership, right?
That's right.
So you get to a point in your career and stuff, it's just like, nah, this is what you own. This is what you operate.
Yeah.
You're able to do anything with it.
That's right. That's right. But props have to go to like the translations and the Wieden+Kennedys who create and allow space for that too.
Yeah.
They could be like hating. They could be like, yo, looks like you're doing something over there. I could be like, yo, it's not the same. Like we're not making like the Colin Kaepernick ad, bro.
Yeah.
Like we're not ever doing that. They're like, yo, actually that's dope. You should do that.
And I love that encouragement too, especially when it's done very authentically, And I think, I want to set the stage for you right now as, we kind of like complete this amazing conversation. Like, for all the creatives, entrepreneurs, storytellers, who may be sitting in front of this episode right now as you were sitting in front of that TV back then.
Wow.
What would you share with them in this moment right now of like just life?
Man, just life. I think, listen, keep going. You do a really good job with your guests on this platform, and that like, I pick up so many gems in the episodes that I've caught, and it's just like, yeah, that part. It's like, damn, this person is preaching right now. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Honestly, you do such a good job. I was like, damn, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to give him a banger like that. But in all seriousness though, like, dream big and don't stop. Keep one foot on the gas, the other on the necks of all of the haters in your life. Like, you gotta keep going. Like, use everything as fuel to keep going. Like, the world is literally our oyster. We can do whatever we want. And I think you're seeing that more and more today. Like, man, we talking about like, what are we even talking about? Like, artists can drop records now and then make those records disappear just as fast. Like, cars fly now. We got robots moving around like airport lounges now, taking my plate from me, asking me if I need anything. Like, we live in this world where all of these things are possible, I guarantee the better ideas are with that 13-year-old right now that might be watching this thing. They have the best ideas. They just have to go. If you go, the world will follow.
I love that, man. Come on, that was a banger right there.
Oh, man, I tried to live up to it.
But I want to take this time to give you your flowers, man. You know, we started this because I think ultimately it's about humanizing those conversations.
Thank you,
we
bro.
see you on the big stages. We see you, you know, doing your thing on these platforms and stuff. But ultimately, it's moments like this that we get, and I'm just like, you know what? It's a blessing to just hear that who you are and what you project and who you are in person is the same exact person, right? It's authenticity. It's about being able to build with your community, like you said, get on, put on. So
Get on,
I
put
want to
on.
give you flowers, bro.
Yeah, I'll
for
take
being
those,
here.
but I got to give you some too, because
I appreciate that.
this is how the world goes around. Like you are dedicating your time to keeping people inspired, like with these conversations and with your guests and your platform. You don't have to do this. You could have slept in. You have a fiance that you could be entertaining right now. Like, thank you, bro. Like, honestly and truly, this is my inner child, that young kid, whoever, who maybe needs this thing of yours. Like, you're changing the world one episode at a time. Thank you for doing that.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you, bro. It's a labor of love. You know what I'm saying? It's grandma telling me, watch her, how she opened the door for everybody else.
Yes.
And it was open door policy for her. And I was just like, how do I now do it in my world to say, let me also have an open door policy for people to share their stories. Like, this fuels me, bro. Like, I would literally do this for the rest of my life, travel all over the world, being able to do this and stuff,
let's do
because
it.
it's,
Let's do it.
bro, like,
What
literally.
we doing next?
Like, bro, we can go anywhere. We go to Italy, like Dubai. Like, I'm literally, I would do
Tequila
this.
wants to take it to Cannes.
Let's do it again.
Let's
do it again. Now you heard it here.
We're doing it again.
We're doing it again. Listen,
do
we're
it.
doing it again.
Let's do it.
I really see myself traveling world doing this.
Amazing.
There's a level of like energy. Like before, I was telling the guys here, I was just like, yo, I just need a cup of coffee. My energy is low. But once I step foot in here, now I gotta perform. And it's conversations like this, like I said, that make it super easy, because it's truly, this is my happy place.
I love that.
You know
I
what I'm
love that
saying?
for
Like,
you. I
this
can
is
tell.
literally my happy place, bro. But man, it's a blessing, bro. Thank you so much again for sharing your story, being so insightful and super inspiring, man.
Bro, thank you. Keep getting on, keep putting on. Appreciate you.
Let's get it.
Let's get it.
And there you have it. That was Off the Cuff with JP.